those races where Republicans are holding plus 3 or 4 or 5 Dem seats, I think matters and is important. Those are places he can go and actually have a real impact. I think the other thing, too, and this actually aligns with the criticism of his time in office, is the number of down-ballot candidates that he's actually getting behind. State House, state senators. The big criticism of the Obama administration and the Obama DNC is that he kind of let the Democratic Party underneath the federal side of things wither away. It's very clear.
1,000
plus
Democratic
seats.
seats.
It's very clear both with the redistricting effort led by Eric Holder that Obama's involved in, plus these endorsements, that they are firmly refocused on that and recognizing how important that's going to be, particularly when redistricting comes up in the next couple of years.
So as we were coming back from break, reading this list, Bali, you were looking at California and Gavin Newsom, so on and so forth. There's a big name missing from this list.
That's right. Senator Dianne Feinstein, who is up for re-election and who was
against a fellow Democrat because of the crazy rules out there.
So what struck me about this list, having just skimmed it, is that in almost all of these cases, these are states that have already held their primaries. So he is not wading into divisive intra-party Democratic fights for the most part. He's not trying to put a thumb on the scale of, you know, the progressives versus the establishment or any of the other Democratic divisions. These are people who have already made it through primaries, and he's just kind of giving them a seal of approval. The other thing he's not doing is making a lot of endorsements in deep red states where his an association with Obama might actually hurt a candidate trying to win in sort of uphill territory for a Democrat. So these are mostly safe plays, but in the case of Feinstein, where her challenger has actually been endorsed by the California Democratic Party in what has become a very divisive ideological fight between Democrats, she would presumably be quite helped by his endorsement, and he is not giving it.
Very, very interesting. And then there's the whole issue of the fact that he's getting involved. People have been asking, can you be more aggressive? Can you get more involved? Well, this is his first step. Let's look at the Republican side, though. President Trump is going to close this week with a third campaign rally, this time a Saturday stump for an Ohio House candidate, Troy Balderson. He's already gotten a coveted Trump tweet endorsement, and the rally comes before August 7th. That's a special election there. A source tells CNN that the president has big plans to be on the road much, much more as midterms ramp up, arguing he wants to take matters into his own hands before November. But the commander-in-chief has some really noticeable surrogates joining his rallies, his own kids.
I have great children, and a couple of them plus are here tonight. I have Eric Trump, who's been fantastic. He loves his political stuff. Eric's wife, Lara, who is so great. I think she single-handedly won the state of North Carolina for Trump. We have somebody that nobody ever heard of, Ivanka.
Now, Eric Trump tweeted a picture from last night's Florida rally that you just saw there with his wife, Lara, who does work on Trump's re-election campaign. His sister, Ivanka, of course, is a White House advisor. You know, this could be incredibly helpful to the president in places that, just like Obama on the Democratic side in red states, in swing areas where the president is, you know, kind of the worst person to come in to help a Republican because they're trying to get independent and Democratic votes. Maybe the kids aren't as toxic.
That's definitely right. And we saw this in 2016 when Ivanka Trump went to places like Pennsylvania, the suburban areas, to campaign for her father. So, and we've seen her come do a lot of interviews recently to talk about workforce training, which is kind of, you know, the least toxic of topics to get into. And in her interviews, she's really not tried to talk about Russia at all. And we've seen Don Jr. kind of wade into the more controversial topics, but he's someone who the base loves. So, you know, we're seeing someone like Ivanka, who's good with sort of the moderate voters, perhaps, and someone like Don Jr., who really gets the base riled up.
It's so true. A fascinating character to me is Lara Trump, the president's daughter-in-law, Eric Trump's wife, who does get into it and is, the president said she single-handedly helped me win North Carolina. He might not be that wrong on that. I mean, she really did help. Listen to what she says on the campaign trail, how she says it.
I get very upset when I hear all this nonsense about Russian collusion. They're trying to tell you that your vote didn't count, folks. let me tell you something. Your vote counted then. It's going to count in the midterms come November, and it sure as hell is counting in 2020 when we reelect Donald J. Trump.
She's on the trail all the time. She has an actual role in the 2020 campaign. She's a senior advisor. Secret weapon?
It's like a mixture of Ivanka and Don Jr. because you've got the woman who can appeal to the women voters who Trump desperately needs help with, but then you've got the Donald Trump Jr. rhetoric that's coming out there saying your vote did matter. They're trying to tell you it didn't matter. But I do think the White House and President Trump is increasingly worried about losing the House, which a lot of people in Washington do believe that the Democrats will take back. And they know that if they do, the Democrats' base wants nothing more than for them to torment President Trump and his agenda and make the rest of his presidency pretty miserable, which is why we're likely seeing those surrogates go out on the trail.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, I've also told that the president is very worried, rightly so, about losing the House, what it means for his agenda. But you make an important point. It's not just his agenda. When the House, whoever has control of the House has oversight responsibilities. And we know from both parties said that he should. He didn't say it was a demand. There's no presidential order that is going to go down. And he was simply expressing his opinion. That just in from Rudy Giuliani trying to clean up what the president did this morning on Twitter that got everybody understandably concerned on Capitol Hill and in the Justice Department about what the president might be doing and whether he's going to do something and not just talk about it.
Well, and he's saying it's just the president's opinions, but the president is saying that Jeff Sessions should end the investigation. Should is taken as a directive. If your boss tells you you should do something, it can often be taken as a directive. He's saying it's just his opinion, but in the past, Sean Spicer, when he was the press secretary, said these tweets are official White House statements. This is what the president is saying. And I think a lot of people are reading this as a directive, his most explicit directive to Jeff Sessions to end this investigation. He's made quite similar comments to this in the past, so this is the most blatant direction for Jeff Sessions, who can't in the investigation because he's recused from overseeing it.
Right. So Giuliani's trying to clarify, trying to clean up what the president said this morning in whatever moment he was in, for whatever reason that he sent that tweet. We still don't really know why he went further than he did before. But you're right. This isn't you expressing your opinion or you or anybody else in the world. This is the president of the United States who has actual authority over things like this. Now, never mind that the Attorney General doesn't have authority since he recused himself, but it's not the same.
It's definitely not the same. I mean, this is the President of the United States, and we're probably going to see Sarah Sanders having to, again, try to figure out how to play this, because this is a statement that's really hard to walk back. And it's, like Caitlin said, rich that they're trying to point out a distinction between his tweets and official orders, because as they've said in the past, the tweets speak for themselves. So, this tweet really does speak for itself.
And also the president has privately tried to convince Sessions multiple times to take back over this investigation and to reverse his recusal. So he's not just saying this on Twitter. He's directed Jeff Sessions in person to take back control of the Russia investigation. So this isn't some random tweet. This is a long-standing pattern from him.
So, Phil, regardless of the clarification that we just got from Rudy Giuliani of what the president really meant, which is just using Twitter to express his thoughts and his opinions, this is a real situation, and there has been a heavy flirtation on Capitol Hill with making the Mueller investigation the law of the land by statute, passing legislation. It hasn't happened. The Senate Majority Leader has been reluctant and resistant to doing that. Will this situation change that?
No. No, look, it won't. And there's a couple reasons here. First and foremost, and this goes for the Speaker as well, and you know this as well as anybody, Dana, their theory of the case here is the way to get through to the President, and the most effective way to get the President to align with your thinking is to do it behind the scenes and by phone. Not publicly, not passing legislation, certainly legislation that the President could veto. They think that would actually exacerbate the situation. Two, the House is gone for the next 5 weeks. But you make a good point. Rank and file members in both the House and the Senate from both parties have contributed or written legislation like this. I don't see any prospects of it coming anytime soon. I think that's just the reality of how things are viewed at the leadership level on Capitol Hill. That just let this stuff go. He's just blowing off steam. He won't actually do anything. And I think, as you know, my understanding is people at the White House tell people on the Hill, don't worry about it, he's not
Yeah.
serious.
Which is effectively what Giuliani said to me, which is that he's just blowing off steam. And the sort of backdrop of this is if he went beyond blowing off steam and actually made a directive to fire Robert Mueller, you better believe the House would have to come back into
Yes.
session, and it would be,
Yes.
you know, a Saturday Night Massacre, modern day. All right, everybody. Taking a breath. Up next, more on what the Senate Intel chairman said about Russian interference right now to November's election.
That it's not just, he's not in a private capacity when he makes statements on Twitter. And the last thing I'll mention, just with respect to his pressure on the Attorney General, his statement today is really consistent with what he has been doing. It was last July of 2017, that he gave a New York Times interview where he also was placing pressure on the Attorney General to take certain action with respect to the then acting FBI director, Andy McCabe. And that month, July of 2017, there were just days after days